So last night, we concluded week one of the college football season with Ole Miss versus Louisville, a game that was a little bit intriguing because even though we all expect Ole Miss's offense to be great, and they were, Ole Miss's defense really came to play, and that's what I really want to talk about, even though we're going to talk about everything, because this is a scary team with the defense. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. Hop down to the comments. Give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Were you surprised by Ole Miss's defense yesterday? And let me know what you're thinking there. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoy that content, be sure to like and comment down below. Those interactions mean a ton to content creators such as myself and getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But with all that being said, let's talk about this, because Ole Miss is a team that has become synonymous, especially where they look to go under Kiffin, with offensive success. And returning Matt Corral, who is a really solid quarterback, had a really good year last year, but he had a sensational week one, and he's a quarterback we have to keep our eye on because he's experienced, he's athletic, he's smart, and he fits what they want to do to a T. I mean, it is a lot of fun watching this Ole Miss offense operate. And even in a day yesterday where they didn't have Lane Kiffin present, you wouldn't have known. Because as good as the offense was, I mean, they executed very well. I was really surprised about their defense. And first and foremost, I understand I had some questions about Louisville going into this game. Louisville didn't have a banner year last year, but they had an offense that averaged around 444 yards per game. They averaged around 200 rush yards per game. But the thing I was really questioning is their lead rusher last year ended up going to the NFL. And outside of that, my question for Louisville was, are you going to be able to have somebody to offer that rushing attack that's not named Malik Cunningham? Malik Cunningham, Louisville's quarterback, is an individual that already does a lot for that team, but it's going to be very tough if you're looking for him to be your quarterback and your leading rusher. It's just going to be a very tough thing and a very tough ask. It's already hard enough to play high-level college football quarterback, and now you're asking that guy to do that plus be your leading rusher. It's asking a ton of an individual, let alone to mention the health implications of that because you're taking a lot of hits. But yesterday we saw this was not the Louisville that's going to rush 200 yards a game, or at least Ole Miss's defense was not allowing that, because at the end of the game, Louisville finished with 155 yards rushing and 200 yards passing. And once again, the thing I had a question about going into this game, would you be able to have a rusher provide any sort of alleviation to your quarterback? The answer for that for Louisville was no, because Malik Cunningham was the leading rusher. And there was actually a time where he was not only the leading rusher, he was the leading passer and receiver, which was probably the craziest college football stat line I've seen in quite some time. That was incredible. Now, Louisville did get some things going in the second half. They kind of got into the flow of the game. They were able to move the ball at the very least. But one of the things that really surprised me was how much Louisville struggled running the football, especially when Ole Miss was begging them to do so half the time. Ole Miss played a really solid defensive game, but yesterday has me asking some questions. First and foremost, what's Louisville's offensive line going to look like? I'm very excited to watch Louisville in the coming weeks, just so I can answer that question. The reason why I ask that is because it always raises questions to me when you're a team that can't run against a three-down defensive lineman defensive formation. Ole Miss was begging Louisville to run the ball half the time. They'd put three down linemen and put everybody else in coverage with number 44, who had a sensational game for Ole Miss, their linebacker, spying the quarterback, making sure that he couldn't use his athleticism to hurt them too bad. And he did a great job yesterday. He had a hell of a game yesterday. Hats off to 44, Carpenter, I believe. He played a really solid game. But the Ole Miss defense, even with three down linemen, were really able to contain Louisville. And they were able to make them do exactly what they wanted. Because if you are lined up on defense and you have three down linemen and you're dropping everybody else into coverage except your quarterback spy, and the other team still can't run on you, you're not going to worry about that aspect of the game at all. And it showed up at the end of the game where Malik Cunningham is 22 of 37 for 191 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and a quarterback rating of 39.1. That right there shows you that Ole Miss had Louisville in a position exactly where they wanted them. Without Louisville being able to run the ball, the threat of the pass really wasn't there enough to make Ole Miss completely respect them. Now, the question I have is, how good is this Ole Miss defense? Because yesterday they were certainly better than we saw them look last year. There's no question about it. But how good are they? It's going to be something to watch because in the next week they play Austin Peay. I really don't think we're going to get a true indication of how good that defense is. But interestingly enough, in the coming weeks, they play Tulane. Tulane coming off of a week 1 game where they lost to Oklahoma, but they looked really solid, and they really tested Oklahoma's defense. So now we kind of get to see that in comparison. Ole Miss came out, and this is a team that if they have a defense can be really, really, really effective. Offensively, we know what they're going to do. They have a lot of guys, and this is a team that had to replace a very talented offensive playmaker, and you wouldn't have known it yesterday watching this team. This Ole Miss offense picked up right where they left off. Lane Kiffin has got himself a team, and if they get a defense figured out, you're looking at a team that could be a really challenging opponent within the SEC because they already are without the defense. Last year's Ole Miss defense was historically bad. Now, the interesting thing about all of this, and the thing that I think I'm going to be watching the closest in the coming weeks, not long ago, ESPN FPI rated the 5 toughest games for the Alabama Crimson Tide, and on that list was Ole Miss. Now, interestingly enough, they only gave Ole Miss a 10% chance to win that game, and in fact, ESPN pegged Florida as a tougher game to Alabama than Ole Miss would be. Now, after watching week 1, and it's only week 1, so I'm not going to overreact, that's for the coming weeks, so allow my overreaction in a few weeks. But after week 1, I have to be honest, it's hard-pressed for me to believe that Florida is a more dangerous team to the Crimson Tide than Ole Miss. Matt Corral is a really solid quarterback. He's a quarterback I really believe in, and Emory Jones has a lot of upside, but I have more questions about the Florida offensive room right now than I do Ole Miss's. Now, ultimately, Dan Mullen is there at Florida. He tends to figure that offense out wherever he goes and whoever he has. So at some degree, I do have a bit of faith that they'll get their offense figured out, but they still have a terrible defense at Florida with Grantham. That doesn't look to change. And there is kind of a question at the quarterback position right now, which Ole Miss doesn't have. The question is, though, is how much is Ole Miss's defense improved? This is a question I'm really interested in hearing from y'all and in the coming weeks. Let me know what you're thinking about this, because if Ole Miss finds themselves being a defensive team, or at least a team that isn't going to get dog walked all day, they could be a real big threat to college football. That's it. See ya.